True crime story of three girls murdered in Rochester, New York. The Alphabet Murders, or most appropriately, the double initials murders, was so called because the first and last names of the victims, who were little girls, begin with the same letter. On top of that, their remains were discovered in towns which also had the same initial. On November 16, 1971, Carmen Colon, 10 years old, was asked by her grandparents to retrieve a prescription at a drugstore in West Main Street just near their home in Brown Street in Rochester, New York. She was last seen leaving the said pharmacy, but she never returned home. 2 days later, Carmen's body was found by two teenage boys who were innocently bicycling in the Steams Road of Riga, a small town near Chile. From the autopsy, Carmen was a clear victim of rape and strangulation. Her neck exhibiting fingernail marks. Carmen's death instilled fear in the minds of the parents. The police worked double time, sparing no effort in finding the heartless killer who shattered the comfort of the whole town. Some drivers from Riga came forward and reported to have seen a semi-nude girl running at Interstate 490, just a mile east of Riga, with a blue car tailing her. Sad as it was, those were the only clues the police found on who killed Carmen. 17 months later, on April 2, 1973, Wanda Volkovich, 11, was also murdered. Like Carmen, Wanda was also from Rochester, New York, and her death also involved sexual assault and strangulation, but this time, using a belt. According to reports, Wanda left their home in Avenue D because her mother asked her to do some grocery shopping in Conkey Avenue. After purchasing items worth $8.52, Wanda left the store and never returned home. It took a whole day for her body to be recovered in State Route 104, in Webster, a mere 7 miles away from Rochester. When witnesses came forward, they mentioned that Wanda was taken by someone driving a brown car, different from the blue car which tailed Carmen in Riga. Carmen Colon in Chile, Wanda Volkovich in Webster. The pattern was there. But one could still easily say that it was all a coincidence. It would take Michelle Maenza to confirm the suspicion about the presence of a double initials serial killer. Michelle, only 11 at the time of her murder, was also from Rochester. On November 26, 1973, just 6 months after Wanda was killed, Michelle was seen by her uncle at Goodman Plaza, and so he offered to take her home, but the young girl refused the offer. 2 days later, her body turned up in Macedon, 15 miles away from Rochester. Witnesses stated that she was seen inside a car in a fast food restaurant in Penfield, and a man with no distinguishing characteristics walked towards her while carrying a bag of food. Autopsy reports on Michelle's body revealed that she ate hamburger before she died. One man also came forward and told the police that he had seen a car near Route 350 in Walworth. Inside the car was a young girl who resembled Michelle. The witness tried to offer help because the other party appeared to have a flat tire. But it was clear that the man with Michelle didn't want any assistance. After Michelle, no more victims surfaced, but the case was far from solved. Aside from their double initials, all the victims came from poor, Catholic families. All of them were not faring well in school. And each body recovered had a strand of white hair from a cat. The letters C, M, and W were also the 3rd, 13th, and 23rd letters of the alphabet. They also theorized that since the order of the killings was Carmen, Wanda, and Michelle, it was a clue about what the killer was telling them, "Come with me." From accounts, the victims were last seen in busy places, so how possible could it be that 3 girls were abducted and killed without anyone noticing? It seemed like the murders were highly organized. Hundreds of people were questioned, and a lot of suspects were interrogated, but the police never went near the point of solving the case. Dennis Termini, a local fireman, was never proclaimed as a suspect, but he was a person of interest. The police drew this conclusion from his involvement in a teenage rape case, which he was served an arrest warrant with. The police also believed that the fireman's suit he always carried was used to attract the victims. Dennis, however, didn't get the chance to prove his innocence regarding the double initials murders since he killed himself after the police tried to arrest him for the teenage rape case. With the technology available today that wasn't before, the police were able to eliminate Dennis Termini. The fireman's body was exhumed and they took a DNA sample to compare with that taken from one of the crime scenes, however it didn't match. Miguel Colon, Carmen's uncle, also became a suspect, for he left Rochester immediately after the slaying. When the police checked his car, they found Carmen's doll, and when they looked further, it seemed like the car had been cleaned. Miguel was of course questioned, but he was not charged with anything. In 1991, he became involved in a domestic dispute where he injured his wife and brother-in-law. When the police arrived at their home, he taunted them to shoot him, but he went ahead and did the honors himself. After his death, the police asked his family if he ever hinted about the Alphabet murders, or at least, with Carmen's death, but they insisted Miguel's innocence. Other persons of interest were Kenneth Bianchi and his cousin, Angelo Buono, who committed the Hillside Strangler murders. However, due to the lack of evidence, they were never charged about the double initials murders. More than 40 years later, the mystery still lives on. The loved ones these children left, gained nothing but harsh memories from the day they disappeared and onwards. Rita Walkowicz, now Deacon, Wanda's little sister, still thinks of rainy Mondays as dark days. According to her, Wanda was taken a day before she turned 10 years old. And when Wanda's body was recovered, it was her birthday. The event was even made more tragic by the fact that before Wanda's death, their father also died of heart attack. Stephen, Michelle's older brother, also related on how upset their uncle had been. In his thoughts, if he just insisted on bringing Michelle home when he'd seen her in Goodman Plaza, she would still be alive now. But no one was sure, because if the serial killer was really set on choosing Michelle as her victim, then she would have found another opportune time. Several years after the Alphabet murders in New York ceased, another case of double initials murders took place in California, but the targets were grown women who were prostitutes. The victims were Roxanne Ragash, Pamela Parsons, Tracy Tafoya, and Carmen Colon, a different person from the young girl in Rochester. Unlike the New York Alphabet murders, the California murders were less planned to say the least because the victims had no other similarities except for the fact that they were all prostitutes. Their remains were also not recovered in places which bore their initials. The California Alphabet murders were also solved when 77-year-old Joseph Naso was arrested for the killings. Many speculated that Joseph Naso was also the killer in the New York case, because he was a native of Rochester. He also worked as a professional photographer, which gave him time and resources to travel back and forth to California and New York. The rape diaries he kept, which was used as evidence against him, also contained a death of a girl in Buffalo Woods, which could mean upstate New York. In 2013, Joseph Naso was sentenced to death for the California murders, but no other evidence linked him to the Rochester killings, especially when his DNA did not match the one found in the New York crime scene. This case has been featured in many documentary shows, and was even turned into a film in 2008, The Alphabet Killer. In the movie, the suspect turned out to be a math tutor who previously worked in the school where all the victims were attending. This idea was taken from the findings that all the girls were not doing well in school. If there's one word you could use to describe the Alphabet murders, it would be enduring. More than 4 decades later and the motives are still unclear. Why did he choose the initials C, W, and M? What was the connection to number 3? If you'll notice, he had 3 victims, whose initials were the 3rd, 23rd, and 13th letter in the alphabet. What was his problem with poor, Catholic families? Why did he choose little girls who were not doing well in school? Although there were many similarities, the police were unable to find a connection between 3 victims that could point them to the direction of the serial killer. Thanks for watching. Please share and subscribe on my YouTube channel @Monpy Stories for more.